Welcome to the Earthed Women Diaries. My name's Amy and I so appreciate you being here. This is a space where I share my thoughts, feelings and the lessons life is teaching me, as well as raw, meaningful conversations with others. It's not perfect, polished or planned. It's a part of the internet for softness, truth and community. For those who want to live a little deeper, a little more honestly. So let's dive in. So today is a very special episode, and this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while. But it's going to be long, so I'm going to break it down into 2 episodes just to make it a little bit more easier for people to be able to actually listen to it and take in the information that I'm sharing. So this particular episode is going to be about my journey to conceiving Eetha. So for anyone that maybe doesn't know, we gave birth in 2022 to our baby girl Eetha, and she was born sleeping. So it's been such a journey, and I've told my story fully once before. This was very recently after the birth, and it was probably about 4 months after. And even when I listen back to it now, because I've listened to it so many times, I don't truly feel like myself. And I feel like I wanted to be able to go into more detail and not only share about the lead up to conceiving Eetha and why we chose to birth in the way that we did, but also then what's happened postpartum, because the postpartum period is huge. And obviously previously I was only a few months postpartum when I shared my journey on another podcast. So this first episode is going to be speaking about the lead up to conceiving Eetha, a loss that we went through previously, and why we went to the decision of free birth, unassisted pregnancy. There are so many names for it. So if I go back, way back, I have always wanted to be a mum. It was always a goal of mine, and I always remember when you're like a child and people would say like, what do you want to be when you're growing up? And for me, it would always be a mum. I wanted to be a mum. I have been very maternal from a young age, and I looked after my younger brother and sister a lot. So I think it always came quite naturally to me. And when Charlie and I first met, almost 14 years ago, I would have had a baby pretty much straight away. I was on the contraceptive pill at the time, and I knew that it wasn't the time for a baby, but I also knew that it really was a life goal of mine to have many children, to have a big family, and really be able to live that dream of being a mum. And I think it comes from growing up from a broken family, from my parents splitting up, and it definitely not being the best or easiest way that it could have been done. So a lot of trauma coming through that really gave me the desire to want to show that a family can happen without all these arguments and this trauma and, you know, things that are unprocessed and stuff like that. So obviously meeting Charlie, was on the pill, came off the pill, probably a couple of years into being with him, not for wanting to have a baby. We actually did fall pregnant once whilst I was on the pill, and that has been the only time that we've fallen pregnant, quote unquote, by accident. We have never fallen pregnant any other time. And that miscarriage was gentle, I'm going to call it. Just some stomach cramps, like a heavy period, sat in the bath, let it pass, and went to see like a health centre and get checked out and make sure that everything was okay, and it was. And then when I did come off the pill, it was because
both Charlie and I were very aware of what was happening when you put a pill into your body and how much it messes with your hormones and the side effects and symptoms that I was experiencing, that I wasn't actually aware that I was experiencing them until after. So coming off the pill, it took a while for my body to begin to regulate, but I would say probably about a year or so. And during that year, of course, we were very careful, we were very mindful. We didn't use, going on from that period, we didn't use any contraception. I just got to know my cycle. And, you know, women can't get pregnant for a whole month. They can't get pregnant any day. There are only specific days that they can get pregnant. So once my body had sort of detoxed and flushed out from having the pill, and I started to get into a regular cycle, it was quite easy to be able to know this is the time when I won't fall pregnant, and this is the time when there's a chance that I could fall pregnant. So we were very smart about it. I still wanted a baby, lots, continuously, and I was probably on Charlie's case quite a bit of wanting a child. And then we moved out. 2020 happened, the joys of 2020, and due to some trouble where we were living, we had converted an annex at his mum's house, and we were separate, but there was still some family drama coming towards us, so we moved out. And it was the most incredible experience to close that door and be like, wow, we've got no parents here. We've got no one we know. We had moved about 30 minutes or so away from where we both lived, or both of our parents lived. And it was just such a freeing experience to know that we're in this space. It was so empty. We hardly had anything apart from like our clothes and some kitchen bits. And we built it, like all the internals, we did it all completely from scratch, and it was a new build. It was brand new, so it was all white, it was very empty, big tall ceilings, and it was such an incredible experience to go through that. And a few days or so, maybe a week, well, after we moved in, we consciously conceived, and we did it just the once, and we said we're going to see if I do fall pregnant or not. I very quickly knew that I was pregnant. Then it was probably a few days before my bleed was actually due. I took a pregnancy test and it was positive. And I took so many pregnancy tests, probably daily. I think I'm going to call it brainwashed, relatively brainwashed by hearing stories, watching One Born every minute all the time, seeing what other people were doing in their pregnancies, and it brought a sense of like anxiety, almost like I need to constantly check that everything's okay. And I, at the time, worked on a neonatal unit at the hospital, looking after premature and sick babies, and incredible job. I loved it. I did not look after my body. I had been going through this transition of becoming more aware of products, of chemicals. You know, we'd stopped using fluoride, I'd come off the pill, I'd stopped having any of these like fragrances and chemicals, and really started to get more in alignment with my body and its natural way of living. But I wasn't fully there. And working at the hospital, I did a lot of night shifts, and I know that I wasn't looking after my body in the way I could have. I had a lot of nausea, wasn't sick at all, but I couldn't be around so many smells. Charlie would be cooking, I'd have to shut myself in the other room. I felt sick all the time, so sick, so tired. It was really, really difficult. For that pregnancy, I was intending to go through the NHS, which for those of you who maybe aren't in the UK, we have like a healthcare system, which is the National Health Service, NHS. And that was where I worked through the NHS, and I had every intention of going through the NHS for my pregnancy and my birth. I didn't know any different. So I registered, had to go through a form and let them know I was pregnant. I then got called in for my first appointment with some midwives, and there they check your urine, they check your blood, and Charlie wasn't allowed to come because it was in 2020, which is something that I really don't agree with. I feel like it takes two people to conceive a baby, and regardless of what's going on, both of those people have the right to be at any appointments, any scans, any tests, any births, anything like that at all. But I went, felt like I was interrogated. I was having question after question after question. And of course, working on the neonatal unit, I am not naive. I am very aware that there are certain things that you want to check that mum hasn't experienced, dad hasn't experienced, to see the likelihood of baby potentially having certain ailments. But just the questions they asked and the way they went through it, and I think because Charlie wasn't allowed to be there, it really didn't feel comfortable. But I went and I wanted a home birth with midwives, and they said, yeah, you've passed, kind of thing. You can have a home birth. And it was like, who are you to tell me where I can birth my child? Being told I'm safe enough to have a home birth, the way they do it, but again, something that doesn't sit right with me at all. And went home, obviously filled Charlie in on everything. And I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks later, I can't remember the exact time frame. This was in 2020, so we're coming up to 5 years ago now. So some of the details are a little bit blurred, but I booked for a private scan. So again, something I saw everyone was doing was going for a private early scan. And I wanted to do it. I wanted that reassurance, and I didn't have the patience inside me to wait for my 12-week scan. So Charlie and I went, and it was at this private place, and it was nice. It was an internal scan, and you can't really see much. I was maybe 10 weeks, 9 weeks, something around them. So you can hear a heartbeat. They check that everything's okay. Everything was great. Went back home, and I'd been a little bit unwell. I'd been years and years and years ago, I suffered with UTIs a lot, and really changed certain products I was using, things that I was doing, and stopped having them for years. I was needing to have monthly antibiotics. It was really bad. And when I fell pregnant, I got one again. Wasn't really bad, but I could definitely feel it was there. I went to work, did a night shift. I was not fueling my body in the way I should. I was staying awake all night around all these fluorescent lights. At the time, I was wearing a mask. Just so much that is not healthy for any woman, but especially a woman who is pregnant and growing a baby. So I then took a few days off work because I really didn't feel right. I felt really run down, really tired. Everyone just speaks about how it's just pregnancy and that's just part of what happens, and you feel tired and you're growing a baby. And yes, there definitely is a part of that. But now experiencing a second pregnancy, I also know it doesn't have to be like that, at least to the level that I was experiencing it. I then worked, this was now beginning of December, it was almost my birthday, and I was working a weekend, day shifts. And it was either just before or whilst I was at work, I think it was just before I started my day shifts. Day or so before I started spotting. When I went to the toilet and wiped, I could see little bits of blood. And I phoned the early pregnancy unit and let them know that I'd started spotting. I told them that I had had a scan, a week, 2 weeks, short while before. Everything was okay. And they were quite reassuring. They said, if it gets any worse, then just call us. Take yourself into A&E if you need to wear a pad. Otherwise, just keep an eye on it, keep an eye on how you feel, your temperature, etc., etc. So did my weekend at work, 2 day shifts in a row, because I then wanted time off for my birthday. And I remember bleeding a little bit heavier, but again, nothing major. It was only when I went to the toilet, and part of me was like, should I go and get checked? You know, the pregnancy unit is very close or not. And I was just like, no, I don't feel like I need to right now. And finished my night shifts, my day shifts. I remember getting home at night, and Charlie had like bought me some flowers and got me a little birthday cake and like lit it and make that place all nice, because it was nearly my birthday in a few days. And yeah, I remember that was really, really special. And then I think it was the following day, we had my dad's dog Minky, and we were having her for I think 2 nights or so. We used to have her in our old place, but in the new place we hadn't had her yet. So I was really excited. I love dogs, in case anyone doesn't know that about me. Absolutely love dogs. And at the time we didn't have a dog, so it was really nice to have Minky and get my little doggy fix and then be able to send her back. And in the morning I woke up and I was bleeding a little bit heavier, so I phoned the early pregnancy unit again. I updated them and I said, I'm feeling worried, I want to get checked. And they were like, you can go sit in A&E. And I was like, I don't feel the need to go and sit in A&E for hours and hours on end. And they said, okay, how about tomorrow morning you come in for your 12-week scan a little bit earlier. We'll make sure everything's okay. So I was like, yep, okay, sounds good. And Minky came over, and then we went out for a drive. Charlie took us for a drive and we got some food. We went to see my mum, picked up some food, and it was the first small meal that I had ate in weeks. I had not had a proper meal for ages. And I was like, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, and was getting my appetite back. My energy was lifting a little bit. And then we got home, we were just relaxing for the rest of the day. And I was just speaking to Charlie about feeling a little bit anxious about going for my scan. And he was like, I can come with you. And I was like, no, I want you to stay with Minky. Like, I'll be okay. Everything's okay. We got into bed, and I began to have some really tight cramps in my belly. And I said to Charlie, I need to go to the toilet. And he was like, okay, like, go on then. I was like, no, I need you to help me. I can't move. And he was like, okay. I was like, now. And he came round to my side. We had a really high bed, and he helped me get to the toilet. I sat on the toilet, and loads just come out of me, lots released from me. And very quickly, we knew what was happening. And I always remember Charlie just being so reassuring and saying to me, we know what's happening right now, and we just need to get through this evening, keep you safe, and then we'll go for our scan in the morning and we'll get everything sorted. And I felt really clear about that. I was not aware of what my body was about to go through. Obviously, we had experienced a miscarriage before at only 4 weeks. Now we were almost 12 weeks. So big difference in the size of baby and what's happening inside the body. And I was feeling very hot, very cold, very hot, very cold. We had a Dyson fan at the time. So Charlie managed to plug it in outside the bathroom and bring it in. And I was like, hot, cold continuously. Minky was amazing. She would come up to me. I was sitting on the toilet. It was the only place I could find comfortable. And she'd come up to me and she'd just like rest her head on me and paw me. And I think she could really tell that something was happening. You know, I'd been a big part of her life since my dad first got her. So we had a really great relationship. I saw her lots. And yeah, she was such a beacon of comfort and warmth in that moment. And I really practiced surrendering to what was happening. I was having cycles of tightness in my belly, deep cramps, really deep. My body then needing to push, and that was without me doing anything. It was just automatically doing this. And then a short break. So like the cycle of labour. My body knew what it needed to do without me needing to do anything at that moment. So we kept going through it. Charlie had laid a blanket, yoga mats, towels, everything in the hallway to try and get me comfortable. But no matter where I went, I was only comfortable on the toilet. So I think I had so much pressure where everything was like releasing, that sitting on the toilet just allowed gravity to like take its course and do what it needed to do. So obviously this started at 10, 11 o'clock in the evening when we went to bed, and we went through the night. Probably got to early hours of the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, something like that. And I really began to not feel well. I got myself on the mat, off the toilet and onto the mat, onto my hands and knees, and I released huge, only what I can describe as a blood clot. It was like so much was there. And I was very dizzy. Charlie was doing everything he could to keep my blood sugars up, to keep me cool, to keep me regulated. He did not leave my side. He is he is a real life hero. Yeah. And it got to the point where he could see that I was quite unresponsive, and I think he asked me like, what do you think you need, or something like that, and he ended up phoning an ambulance. It was something that I was so hesitant about because, one, I knew the state of the hospitals in December 2020, and two, I didn't want to leave Minky. She had come to stay and she hadn't been at ours before, and I was so anxious to leave her. So Charlie phoned an ambulance, and just that experience of having to phone an ambulance was so uncomfortable because they like asked Charlie, is the patient breathing? He was like, yeah, and they were like, we need to speak to the patient then. And at the time, I was in no fit state to be talking to anybody. I had been awake coming up to 24 hours. My body had been going through what it was going through. And even on the phone, I just couldn't talk, and they were getting like a little bit aggy with me for not giving proper answers. And in the end, I just gave it back to Charlie. And when we got off the phone to the paramedics, Charlie phoned my dad. He didn't answer, but he phoned Charlie right back, and Charlie obviously said to him, Amy's bleeding, an ambulance is on the way. So my dad could make his way back to come and look after Minky, pick her up. And I remember we were trying to get hold of a few of our friends because, is there anyone to come and look after Minky? Because my dad was a few hours away, but there wasn't. And I just had to surrender to her being left. And yes, she was absolutely fine. Paramedics arrived, and there was one really nice guy, the other not so much so. But when they arrived, I passed out, and they obviously did all my obs. My blood pressure was extremely low. My heart rate was very high. My oxygen was very low. My blood sugars were so low. And yeah, they made it very clear that we've got to get you to hospital now. So they went and got a stretcher, got me into the ambulance. And I remember saying, Charlie's coming. And they said, he can come in the ambulance. We don't know the state or the situation in the hospital. And I remember being like, no, he is coming in the hospital. I don't care. Like, no. And of course, you know, I shouldn't be worrying about that. I should be just worrying about my body and my baby and keeping myself safe, knowing that my partner can be by my side no matter what, rather than just shut out because of some scam that's going on in the world. So we got to the hospital, they blue lighted us to Resus, and it was probably about 6:30, 7 in the morning by this time, because they were getting ready to switch over from night shift to day shift. And from the moment we walked in, it was hell, to be quite honest with you. It was like a horror movie. And all I needed was a scan to see, one, if my baby was still alive, and two, if they were even still inside me. Because I'd passed so much on the toilet, I don't know what had come and gone. And then I knew I needed some blood. I hadn't had a blood transfusion before, but I knew that my body needed some blood. And as soon as I got there, they wanted to test me for, I'm going to be careful what words I use on here, but I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows what was happening in the world in 2020, and they wanted to test me for that. And at the time I worked at the hospital, like I said, and I knew that you didn't have to test. It was optional. There was no requirement to have to test, so I politely declined. I didn't refuse. There's a big difference between refusing and declining. I declined. And that definitely got their backs up, 100% got their backs up. And they wanted to give me antibiotics. Again, I was asking why, and they were like, it's just precautionary, just in case. And I made it very clear, I've had lots of reactions to antibiotics. I haven't taken any antibiotics in years now, and I don't want to be putting that in my body if I don't need to. So, you know, let's check my bloods and do things like that. So, you know, I come from a hospital nursing background. I know what I'm talking about. And not just that, I'd gone through a very big self-discovery journey that I wasn't going to just do what they say and put stuff in my body. That's not me. And I have my right to ask questions and know what's being put in my body. Hospital staff don't usually like it because, you know, it's making their life a little bit harder. But as a human being, you have to stand true to yourself and not just cave into what other people are wanting to give you or say or do. I was very grateful to have Charlie there. They wanted us both to wear masks. I did not want to wear a mask, of course, I was passing out. Charlie also did not want to wear a mask. I'd gone through phases of passing out when I was younger for different reasons, but during this time, he was like my anchor. So I don't know if anyone's experienced passing out here, but it's like you can't hear properly, you can't see properly, and like everything's not properly there. It's like all a bit like all over the place. So every time I was passing out and coming back round and I could see but I couldn't hear, Charlie like being able to like lip read what he's saying and things like that, him putting a mask on was not going to be helpful for the situation that I was in. And instantly this arsehole of a guy, to be quite frank with you, was like, right, we're getting security. And the paramedics were still there. And the one nice paramedic said to Charlie, look, they will kick you out. Quite simply, they don't care. They'll kick you out. And, you know, just do it for your wife. Like, she needs you here. So he had one on and he would just, you know, put it around his chin, keep him happy. And then they lost my first set of bloods. Bearing in mind, it was so difficult for them to take blood because I had lost a lot of blood. And so my body was saving my blood for its vital organs, not just allowing my blood to be taken. So that was so difficult. They then lost it. They then did it again. They then lost it again. They then did it a third time. And then whilst they were waiting for the results, they got a doctor to come round, and she like went inside to like feel me. And by this point, I had probably been going through a good 10 hours of, I was still bleeding, I was still going through that. of course it's going to be painful. And because I made a bit of noise when like she went inside me, she said, oh, I'm going to stop and wait for the consultant to come and see you later. And it was like, I'm bleeding. We don't know what's going on with my body or my baby. And you don't want to give me a little bit of pain to give me an answer to what's going on. Like, take some responsibility. You're a doctor. Take accountability for your role. And it just summed up the whole shit show of the hospital. So they then admitted me. I did not want to be admitted, but they admitted me. Numerous other members of staff had come and asked me to do a test, the test for what was happening in the year of 2020. And I still declined. And then, I was in the bed, wasn't allowed to get up. The doctors had made it very clear to the ward, and this ward was awful. My mum had been there a few years prior, and it was a really bad ward. It was a ward where they sort of just chuck everyone and anyone on there. They don't really have anywhere for you to go, so off you go. Go and sit on that ward. And visiting hours were only for an hour, but Charlie stayed with me. We pulled the curtain. The commode was there for me to use as and when I needed it. Charlie was continuously waking me up because I was constantly passing out. We had more staff come in and ask for me to have this specific test. Then I had another staff come in and have to take more bloods because, yes, they lost it again. Like craziness. And by this time I'd been in the hospital probably 6-7 hours. And there was so much that happened on that ward that I can't even speak about all of it because I would be here all day. But there was a woman next door and the curtain started to open a bit, so Charlie pulled it closed and was like, sorry madam, and she started screaming and going mad. And bearing in mind all morning she had been screaming and swearing and effing and blinding and everything else. And we were very quiet, just in the corner, keeping ourselves to ourselves, and everyone else was swearing and screaming and shouting for this medication and that morphine and this and that, and we just was so quiet in the corner. And then Charlie was like, I'm going to quickly pop to the toilet, so he went to the toilet, and when he went, he had put me onto the commode before he went so I could go to the toilet, and the matron came in, and I actually knew the matron. I don't think she recognised me because I looked in an awful state. Been going for a very long time through this now. And she tried to get me for God knows how many times this was now to do a test. The test of 2020 to try and do it again. And it was funny how she came once Charlie had left. And I made it very clear, I am not doing this test. I work on this unit, the maternity unit, whatever you'd call it, women's and maternity. And I know that to get care, you do not have to have this test. I also know that if I do have this test, you will not get the results straight away. Now, they were saying that I could not have a scan to see if my baby was still alive until I either did the test or waited until the end of the day, because I could be putting other women at harm. Now, bearing in mind, the doctors had made it very clear that I am not to leave my bed and the scan is to be brought to me. But because this unit was an absolute, I'm not even going to use a word that I want to use, horrific mess, they were creating their own rules, which in result put my life drastically at risk. So she was quite thrown back with what I said to her, but was like, I understand. I'll make sure no one comes and asks you again. You will have to wait until the end of the day to have your scan. It'll be after 5 o'clock. Bearing in mind, we got there about 6:30, 7, whatever time it was in the morning. I was still bleeding. I was still passing out. As a hospital, as nurses, even people listening to this, when the brain is starved of oxygen for a certain period of time when you go unconscious, that is extremely dangerous, extremely. I was left for around 11 hours before I got my scan in that state. It makes zero sense to me. If 5 hours prior I said, okay, do a test, straight away, before they even got my results, I would have been able to go and have a scan. Does that make sense to you? Because that certainly does not make any sense to me. So, went through a few other things throughout the day, finally got taken for a scan. As we were going there, one of the nurses said, oh, I don't think Charlie can come in. And I said, we're about to find out if our baby is still alive. Charlie is coming in. And she said, I'll have to go and check with the nurse in charge. And the nurse in charge was just in front of us. And the nurse in charge, thankfully, had a brain and had some empathy and some compassion and said, of course he's going in. Yes, he's going in. So we went in, they got me onto the bed, did the scan, and unfortunately, baby had no heartbeat, but baby was still inside me. And they were saying how my uterus was really tired and everything inside my body they could see was just exhausted. And I had to go for surgery. And I just remember being so upset at that point because not only had I gone through what I'd gone through, not only had Charlie had to experience everything there, but now finding out that my baby wasn't alive, and then finding out I had to go for surgery. And it went from bad to worse from the moment that it started. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone the way I was treated there. Anyone. Not my worst enemy. How people working as nurses can not have any empathy or compassion or just step out of their brain and connect to their heart and feel what this patient must be going through right now. It is mind-blowing, and it is so scary to think however many people must experience similar negligence like I did. And so they got me off the bed, back into the wheelchair. And when they did that, I passed out again, probably over 20, 30 times. I do not have a clue how many times I passed out. But they couldn't bring me round. It took them a while to bring me round. And so what happens? It then turns into an emergency. The next thing I know, I wake up on the bed and there's so many people around me. Charlie's to the left of me holding my hand, and there's just so many people. And someone's got my arm out, bearing in mind like they haven't had my blood results back yet. And we had been in the hospital all day. And because they'd lost my blood that many times, they didn't even know my results. And I was there for massive blood loss. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And so someone was trying to get blood. And there was this woman in front of me at the end of the bed. Like, I was lying on the bed and she was in front of me, and she was quite a butch woman. And I just could hear her like ordering everyone around, like, get me this, you go down and get some emergency blood now, like all of this sort of stuff. And I was grey. Completely grey. My blood pressure was basically non-existent. My heart rate was completely through the roof. And bearing in mind, my levels were like bad when I first came into the hospital. All those hours later, and I wasn't hungry, but I wasn't allowed to eat, I wasn't allowed to drink, I was still having massive blood loss, I was passing out continuously, and I was just left to rot. Literally felt like I was left to die. And this woman said to me, we've got one chance to see if I can get your baby out now. If not, we need to get you to theatre right away. Like, this is an emergency. This is serious. And I just said, do what you need to do. Like, I do not want to go to surgery. Please do whatever you need to do. So they used a tool that they use when they do like smear tests, and she got the baby out. And I can't even tell you, within seconds, how different my body felt. I felt such a release from it leaving my body, and they got blood in straight away. I can't remember exactly what my blood levels were now, but they said if I was left much longer, it would have been fatal and it would have been really bad. So I felt so much better straight away. Baby had come out of me and I'd started to get blood into me. And then after a while, I remember, I think Charlie put my phone on because I hadn't had my phone on. And he had obviously let a few people know. But I just remember the flood of messages coming through, sending me so much love and support, and yeah, so much love and support. But then, yeah, Charlie had to leave. They said he couldn't stay overnight. And I said to him, look, I'm actually okay. If I'd felt how I'd felt earlier in the day, it would have been so different. I wouldn't have wanted him to leave. But at this point, I had had one blood transfusion. I couldn't go because they needed to give me another blood transfusion because my blood was still really low. And I just said to him, look, I'm just going to sleep. I'm going to sleep all night and you can come back in the morning and get me. And I remember he was sitting in the chair next to me and he was so upset because he so did not want to leave me. And yeah, I just remember saying to him, like, go home, tidy up, because the house would have been left a mess. My dad and his girlfriend did like tidy and sorted some bits, because when they went to go and pick Minky up, they waited there for a bit for us, not thinking we would be gone for so long. And yeah, I just said, Charlie, get some rest, get the car. We didn't have the car because we had come in by ambulance. So, and we lived about normal driving, it was about 40 minutes away from the hospital. So yeah, he waited for the night shift team to come on, and I had these two lovely, lovely women. And then he went home and I said to the women, I'm going home tomorrow morning. And they said, okay, well, you need to get up and go to the toilet. We don't expect you to walk there by yourself, but you have to be shown to be walking there with support and going to the toilet. So I said, let's do it then. So they would like take me, both of them, to the toilet, and I'd do a wee and then come back. They like changed all my bedding. They were so disappointed because I'd been left in I'd been bleeding all day and I'd been left in this bed sheets and everything that was filthy, and no one had like bothered to help me or anything. It was, yeah, dignity for patients is just mind-blowing. So much in this story is mind-blowing, but yeah, so then I got comfy and went to sleep and basically slept all night. They gave me enough blood transfusion, I didn't wake up. They done like hourly observations on me, I didn't wake up. I was out of it. Obviously I'd been awake for, 2 nights basically. And so I was, really exhausted. My body had been through a lot and it just needed that sleep. And I remember waking up in the morning, it was probably about 6 in the morning, something like that. And I checked my phone And like Charlie had texted me throughout the night, made sure I was okay. And I had a notification at the time. I used an app called The Pattern. And on this app, they notified me and it said, today you're starting a new cycle. And I just remember feeling so grateful for what I was being presented and shown in such a heartbreaking and difficult time. And yeah, the nurses did their handovers to the daytime team. I remember the daytime team coming back and being like, wow, you look like a different person. It was like, yeah, because I've had blood in me. And then the doctor's done like their normal ward round. And, you know, the nurse was like, Amy wants to leave now. And they were like, that's fine. She just needs to have a scan, make sure everything's okay. And I said, let me be first then. I'm not waiting. I want to be first. So they did me first and had a scan and just to make sure everything had been like come out of my body, and it had. Everything was fine. They checked my ovaries. They checked everything. They said everything was clear. They don't see anything abnormal. You know, these things just happen. Do a pregnancy test in 2 weeks. See you later. That's basically it. And yeah, I just remember sitting on the bed. They said, you need to have something to eat before you go. So I was like, just give me a slice of toast then. Had a little slice of toast. And then Charlie came back and I just remember him walking in and he was looking all fresh and so confident. Like we had been through so much shit the day before. And he just had this like energy of like masculine, I'm coming to get my woman. Like I just felt so good. So yeah, we left. And I remember walking out of there was so difficult because you have to go past the part where all the pregnant women are, they're getting their scans. And yeah, I just remember feeling, I think my body was in such a state of like stress and shock that it didn't really hit me about the baby loss because of everything I'd gone through physically with my health and the experience in the hospital. I remember driving home and Charlie had to go so slow because I was so tender. And we got home and he had set everything up so nicely. And he set up camp on the sofa because we had a huge corner sofa and the bed was really high. So my blood pressure was still very low. I needed to take it really slowly. I couldn't walk unaided. I just felt so dizzy. And at least being on the sofa, I could crawl. So I could crawl on and off the sofa and it made it much easier. And he took me to the bathroom when we first got back. And I remember looking in my mirror and I felt like, who are you? And what the hell has just happened the last, gone 24 hours, 36 hours or so. And I just remember feeling like such a different person. So different. I think part of that was like knowing I had other blood running through my body, but I just felt so different. And so then the recovery began, and it was definitely a journey of recovery. We did a lot of juicing and things like that anyway, so lots of juicing, lots of fruit and veggies, like smoothies, everything that was really soft and easy for me to digest. And didn't really see anyone because it was during a lockdown, so it was actually really nice to not have the pressure of people coming to see us and just being able to spend that time with Charlie and I, because even though we lived together, we did so much separately because I was so focused on like work, constantly work, and wasn't able to slow down unless we went on holiday or something like that. So to be in an environment where I had been forced to slow down, I had no choice. And we invested in a sauna. So we got an infrared sauna, and it is probably the best investment that I've ever got. I could not recommend it enough to people. just what that did for my health and my detoxing and my journey to recovery and strengthening myself was so high. And it just really opened up a new door to mine and Charlie's relationship. And I saw him in a different light. I think him having to look after me in that way saw me in a slightly different light. And yeah, we just spent pretty much a couple of weeks indoors. I was extremely weak. I remember getting phone calls from the hospital when I was supposed to be going for my 12-week scan, when I was supposed to be going for like this appointment and that appointment. And obviously they hadn't communicated what had happened, so I still had people contacting me. And I got signed off work for a period of time. It was for a few months. And it was just a really important time. I really connected with nature when my strength got a bit better. We obviously hadn't lived in that area for too long, and there was so many beautiful places. It was a village, so there was so many walks, so much countryside. So as my strength started to improve, we would go out and explore and sun gaze all the time, ground, really give my body everything it needed to like not just recover, but be so much stronger than I've ever been before. And we did do that. I started to want to go back to work, and I tried it, and it wasn't happening. I had a lot of PTSD from where I was passing out, and they were putting a mask over my face. Being in a hospital environment, I couldn't put that mask on. I never wore a mask outside of my work, shops, anywhere else. I didn't wear a mask. I didn't really have a choice in my workspace, and I surrendered to that. But going back into the environment, and I was building it up. So I started with like an hour here, an hour there, and slowly got like longer days. I was having panic attacks. I was sweating. I had really high heart rate just from putting this mask on. And then I went to do my first night shift, and I was actually really looking forward to it because I had a great team, and I felt I was starting to get a bit of normality back again. And I was getting a handover for this baby, and this baby was a full-term baby. So she was born at her full gestation, and mum had come in to A&E, stomach cramps, didn't feel well, found out she was pregnant, gave birth, and didn't want the baby, so left. This baby was withdrawing from drugs. Mum was a drug addict. And I remember getting this handover, and I just started bursting into tears and walked out into the staff room, and a few of my friends there came and checked in on me. And I just remember feeling so upset because I wanted a baby from as young as I can remember. And I had spent so many years looking after everyone else's babies, supporting other mums with their feeding, with their routines, with their structure, with their weaning, with the behaviours, with so much. And it finally got to the time that I thought I was going to be able to do that. I was going to be able to breastfeed my own baby, to support my own baby, to go through pregnancy, to go through birth. I was so excited. I cannot even tell you. And then to have that all taken away, and then there was women out there like that completely abused their body and left an unborn child to be withdrawing and scratching their face and screaming because they needed the drugs so bad. It just broke my heart. But I took a moment and went back in and actually had a good night shift, because usually when the babies are premature, they have to spend a lot of time in their incubators and things like that. But I had just the one baby, and it was this full-term baby, and she needed a lot. She needed a lot of cuddling and holding, and I was able to hold her and cuddle her and feed her and give her so much love and positive energy. And I truly believe that not only did that help on her journey she was on, but that really did help on my journey as well. So I remember after that, there was a very big wake-up call that I can't be in this environment. I have so much trauma inside me right now, and I can't be here. So I got signed off work again, and I went through a few different talking therapies with a few different women, lovely women, but nothing seemed to be feeling like a true help or support. I don't quite know why, don't quite know what that is, but it wasn't feeling like it was what I needed. So Charlie and I just spent the summer together. I really lent into my creativity of like making more holistic and homemade products. I went on a huge journey of finding out more about the world and connecting with new women and people in general who were shining a light on the corruption of what was happening in 2020 and now into 2021. And I just went through, like, thinking about it now, I went through such a transformation then, such a transformation. And do you know what? I can only be so grateful for all of that experience, because I know it's really cliche to say when you go through something, oh, it's changed me. That changed my whole entire life. I cannot even tell you to the levels and the depths that went through going through a loss like that. And everything that started to become lit up for me on all the lies and the truths and what was actually happening in the world. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that experience. And then it got, during the summer, I remember a friend of mine fell pregnant, and I remember saying to Charlie, I feel like I'm ready to, have another baby. And he was like, it's coming, but not yet. And I remember just being like, okay. And I really surrendered to it. I was like, okay, I trust you. And I wasn't usually like that. Usually when he said that in the past, I was, oh, but I want a baby. Come on. All of this sort of, annoying woman kind of thing. And very shortly after, we conceived. And it was the same month. So again, September 2021. So a year later that we conceived again. And I remember falling pregnant, doing the one pregnancy test and being like, that's all I'm going to do. Found out I was pregnant, and both Charlie and I knew that we couldn't go down the same path that we did before, but I didn't know what other path there was. And I remember him saying something, and I won't be able to properly say it word for word, but it was something like, if you are on your own in the woods, you could birth. Your body knows what to do. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I started to think about what happened years and years and years ago before there was hospitals, and when women would support other women and just be birthing at home. It wasn't turned into a business like it is now. Birth is a business, basically. And I went searching online, on Instagram, and I came across this page after a lot of searching. Wonderful, wonderful lady, and I'll pop her details in the description below. Her name is Sima, and her Instagram tag is Live Wild Birth Free, and she is just amazing. We had a discovery call And I just had a chat with her. She wanted to find out about like my history and what had brought me to that point. So I filled her in, and she was just so supportive, not judgmental, not giving opinions, not telling me what I should do, just asking really good questions. And it was so helpful. And thankfully, because of the way the algorithm works, I had then been shown so many other pages of people who free birthed and birthed without hospitals and birthed at home without a midwife and just birthed and all that sort of thing. So I started to connect to so many incredible women, and we hadn't had a scan yet, and it got to December, and that first 12 weeks was really difficult because of what had happened the year before. But you know, I did just the one pregnancy test. I totally trusted in myself. I was using the sauna, which is so important because so many people are, oh, check with your doctor if you're pregnant. But it was part of my routine. I wasn't going to stop that. I was grounding every day. I was really cleansing my energy. I was going for walks. I was juicing. I was like just really looking after my body. And that's not to say I wasn't feeling tired. That's not to say I wasn't feeling nauseous at all. But I was feeling nothing like I was feeling on the first pregnancy, because I was so intentional with what I was doing that I wasn't making it worse. I was really allowing my body to just feel what it was feeling, but really help and support it. So we decided that we were going to go through the pregnancy not using the hospital. We knew that the hospital was there. So if we changed our mind and we wanted to go down that route, we absolutely could. There was no like, have to go at this time. It was like, we can reach out to them. And I booked for us to have a scan. We really didn't know if we was going to have one, but I really felt the call to have one. And you have to be so careful when you have scans, because very early or very late, or at least, you know, I would say from sort of 25 weeks onwards, you are putting a lot of risk to the baby. Like they say, babies always hide and they don't like being scanned. Why do you think? Go and do a little bit of research. Go, and you'll have to do some digging because you won't find this just on Google, but go and see the effects of what scans can have on babies. And I see women have numerous scans regularly, and that is doing so much harm and damage. You are increasing risks drastically just for having these scans. And so I just wanted to go for the one, and we were about 16 weeks or so, and they call themselves like a bonding place. So of course they tell you your gestation and things like that, but they're more just focused on the baby, the health, the placenta, and make sure everything's okay. And that was what they did. And they were like, do you want to find out what you're having? And we were like, yeah. And we think we're having a girl, and we was. And yeah, everything was perfect. She was moving and she was happy and she was good size and everything was good with me, and there was no concerns, no red flags, nothing at all. So that was like a real amazing bit of reassurance. And do you know what? I think it really helped as well, because I did have a lot of people around me who were so uncertain of what I was choosing to do. And I get that. I do get that. But just going for that scan and showing them like everything is okay, I know it gave them some reassurance too. So it was something that I felt really good with, and I knew from that point I wasn't going to have any more scans. If I felt concerned, of course, at any point I would have gone to the hospital, I would have got a scan, but just for overall general health, that was going to be my only scan that I had. And so that was in December of 2021. And I am going to leave it there. So I am going to continue the next episode where I will share about the rest of my pregnancy with Eetha, my very long birth, what happened when she was born, and then what happened with me going for surgery and being ventilated, and then the postpartum period up to now, which is 3 years on. And let me tell you, I can definitely feel my body still going through a lot of changes and grief from not having my baby. I can feel it. So if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. I am so grateful that you've taken the time to listen to this and listen to my story. I have been sharing more online recently, and I've had so many people, yes, judge, but also just not understand why I chose to do what I did with free birth. So I really hope that this small little section, because it will never be able to do justice what we really experienced, what we really went through, and how it actually was going through that situation with the miscarriage. But I hope this gives you a little bit of understanding of, I understand why you chose to do that. Maybe you don't agree, and that's okay. We don't all have to agree. We're not here to all do and think the same, but we can still understand and support each other for choices that specifically aren't made naively. It's not something I just go into like blindfolded and not caring. I put so much time, thought, energy, focus, education into whatever I do. So any comments you've got, please leave them below. I am a very open book, so if you do want to know any more, ask away. I'm always wanting to connect with just women in general, but especially if you've been through something similar, whether it is pregnancy, whether it is a loss, whether it is, neglect through hospitals, connect with me. Let's have a chat. I am wanting this space to really be able to share other people's stories and enlighten the world of things that happen, however that might be. Thank you again. I appreciate you, and I look forward to sharing part 2 with you.